Okay, so picture this. It's 1776. A Scottish philosopher, a guy named Adam Smith, drops a book that, no exaggeration, is going to change the world. It's called The Wealth of Nations, and it digs into this massive question that we're still wrestling with today. Why are some countries wealthy while others struggle? The crazy part is, the answers he came up with, they're just as powerful now as they were back then. So, what we're going to do is walk through his logic, step by step. We'll look at 5 really big ideas that connect something as tiny as a pin factory all the way up to the global economy. It's a pretty cool journey. All right, so where does Smith begin? You might think he'd start with kings, or gold, or grand government policies. But nope, he starts with something super small, almost mundane, a pin factory. And believe it or not, this little example holds the very first key to understanding how wealth is created. So just try to imagine this for a second. It's just you. You have to take a piece of metal wire, draw it out, make it perfectly straight, cut it to length, sharpen the point, then make the little head for the top and somehow stick it on. Smith realized that if one person tried to do all of that, with their absolute best effort, they'd be lucky to make one single pin in a whole day. But, and this is where it gets absolutely nuts, he looked at a factory where that same work was split up among just 10 people. And get this. Together, they could crank out a mind-blowing 48,000 pins in a single day. That's 4,800 pins per person. So you go from 1 pin to nearly 5,000. How is that even possible? Well, it's all about breaking the job down into tiny little steps. Smith saw that one guy just drew the wire. The next guy just straightened it. A third person did nothing but cut it. You get the idea? Each person became a master of their one tiny task. They got faster, they got better, and they didn't waste a single second switching from one job to another. And this idea right here has a name, the division of labor. It is the absolute engine of productivity. When you take a complicated job and chop it up into simple, repeatable tasks, you can suddenly make so much more. And this is the first foundational piece of the puzzle for how nations get rich. Okay, but that brings up a really obvious question, right? If one person is only making the heads of pins and another is only sharpening the points, how do they eat? How do they live? Why would anyone bother to specialize like that and then have to trade with each other? Well, Smith's answer to this is probably one of the most famous lines in all of economics. He says that this huge, complex system of cooperation, the one that gets us our dinner every night, it doesn't run on goodwill. It's not about people being nice. It's powered by something way more dependable, self-interest. What he's saying is, look, the baker doesn't bake bread because he's a great guy who wants you to have a nice meal. He bakes bread because he needs to make money to feed his family. The way you get your dinner is by appealing to his self-interest, not by telling him how hungry you are. You're giving him something he needs, your money, and he's giving you something you need. It's a win-win. But that creates a giant new puzzle, doesn't it? If everybody is just looking out for number one, shouldn't the whole system just be chaos? How on earth do all these separate, selfish decisions lead to a world where we have just the right amount of bread and cars and everything else we need? This is where Adam Smith brings out his most famous idea of all. He argued that all of these countless individual transactions, each one driven by self-interest, are somehow guided, as if by an invisible hand, to create a result that's good for society as a whole. And the amazing part? There's no central planner, no one in charge telling people what to do. So how does this invisible hand actually work its magic? Well, according to Smith, it all comes down to this constant battle, this tug of war between 2 different kinds of prices. Okay, so on one side, you have what he called the natural price. This is basically the true cost of making something. You know, what you have to pay for labor, materials, and a fair profit for the business owner. It's the baseline. Then on the other side, you've got the market price. That's the price you actually see on the sticker today, and it can go up or down based on supply and what he called effectual demand, which is really just a fancy term for how many people actually want the thing and have the cash to buy it. And this is the invisible hand in action. It's really all about competition. Think about it. If the market price for, say, bread suddenly shoots way up, what happens? More people are going to say, hey, I want to get in on that, and they become bakers. That new competition increases the supply of bread, which naturally pushes the price back down towards that natural cost. And it works the other way too. If the price gets too low, bakers start going out of business, the supply shrinks, and the price creeps back up.
It's this beautiful, self-regulating system that sends resources exactly where they're needed most.
So, we've been talking about this natural price, the baseline cost of making something. But what's actually in that price? What are its components? Let's peel back the layers and see what Smith thought every price tag is really made of. Smith argued that you can break down the price of pretty much anything into three fundamental parts. And these three things, he said, are the original sources of all income and all revenue in an economy. So, first up, you've got wages. That's pretty simple. It's what you pay the worker for their time and effort. Second, there's profit. That's the return that goes to the entrepreneur. The person risked their own money to start the business in the first place. And third, there's rent. This is the payment that goes to the landlord for the use of their land. According to Smith, every single price, whether it's for a simple loaf of bread or a massive piece of machinery, is just a mix of these three payments.
And this is so important because understanding this, that value comes from labor, capital, and land, allowed Smith to make his final and maybe his most revolutionary point. It allowed him to totally redefine what it even means for a nation to be rich.
Now, to really get how big of a deal this was, you have to understand the old way of thinking. Before Smith, the main economic theory was called mercantilism. And for mercantilists, the idea of wealth was really, really simple. It was just about how much gold and silver a country had stashed away. Yeah, under mercantilism, a nation's wealth was literally the pile of gold and silver in the royal vault. And that meant the economy was a zero-sum game. If I wanted to get richer, I had to take your gold, which meant you got poorer. Smith just looked at this and said, that's completely wrong. He argued, what good is a pile of shiny metal if your people are starving or don't have clothes to wear? And this is the big punchline of his entire book. For Adam Smith, a nation's true wealth isn't a static pile of gold, it's the productive capacity of its people. It is the sum total of everything that country produces in a year, all the goods, all the services. Wealth isn't a fixed pie where my slice getting bigger means yours has to get smaller. Wealth is something we can create. The pie can actually grow. So let's do a quick recap of the whole journey. It all starts with the division of labor, which makes us insanely productive. That whole system runs on the fuel of self-interest. And it's all coordinated, not by a king, but by the invisible hand of the market. The final result of all this isn't a hoard of gold, but the true wealth of a nation, its ability to produce things. This whole model is basically the engine of modern prosperity.
Which kind of leaves us with one last big question to think about. Fast forward 250 years to today. With our crazy complex global supply chains, online marketplaces, and massive corporations, how much of our economy would Adam Smith still recognize? How much of it is still just about the pin, the butcher, and that invisible hand?